because this man, Eric Barra, had brought it to his employer's attention that the children and family services had been placing children, a total of 54 children rather, into this home that had been one decertified and two of a known molester. And that this was as a result of systemic failure in the department. It started with him standing up next to a detective, a woman named Michelle Brand, in back of a two-way mirror, one-way mirror where they could look through, but the people on the other side could not see them. And this other social worker was interviewing this little 10-year-old girl, and the 10-year-old girl was, her little mousy, girly voice through her tears was explaining to the social worker how her foster father would take her into the closet, would put his tongue down her throat, would make her touch his penis. Then he would take pictures of her private, and he would put these pictures into an album with other naked girls. The deputy sheriff, Michelle Brand, told Eric, go get me all the information on this foster home. He went back to the Child Family Services office, to his desk, and tried to find, he solicited the help of some of his supervisors, and between the two of them, they came up with the list. But because of the misinformation, for example, Rodriguez was spelled with a Q instead of a G, they couldn't find this home, any information about the home. So Eric decided he would start searching by the names of the children. And through this process of looking for the foster children, he was able to come up with these three lists. So once he presented these lists to his supervisors, they told him, one, to erase the list, and then they fired him. County engaged in outright fraud. They pulled the fraud on the court. They lied to the court by saying there was no evidence. They just engaged in what we call expoliation of evidence in order to protect their own careers. They didn't want the world to know that these managers for 15 years have been placing children, vulnerable children, in the home of a known molester, and that indeed these children had been molested. It was human inattention, human negligence, where they failed to be attentive to where they were placing these kids. They were failing to enter in social security numbers, for example. They were entering in the wrong name. Some of the areas were just totally left blank on the form. They were not following up with these children that they placed in these foster homes, and knowing that they had a higher duty to monitor foster children, a higher duty than, for example, children who they had taken custody from their own homes, that is, kids who were with their own biological parents. Since these kids were put into a foster home with different parents, the laws creates a higher duty for San Bernardino Children and Family Services to monitor those kids. And they failed, they breached that higher duty of care.
Said we talked briefly the other day about the state attorney general, and because they were also investigating. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, there was a grand jury that was convened, and the state attorney general at the time was Kamala Harris, and her office was investigating this whole incident. But everything sort of got whitewashed by Child Family Services. So the grand jury that was investigating it was disbanded, and Kamala Harris was not given all the true information. So her investigation led to nowhere, because all of the evidence was being controlled by Nicola Hackett, who's the second in command of Child Family Services, until we got involved. And we dug down and got all the evidence to prove all of the frauds. But Kamala Harris didn't have the evidence at the time that we were able to ultimately dig up and put all of the pieces of the puzzle together to show the fraud.
Hmm. So at this point, maybe a reopening of that investigation, since they didn't have the facts when they were first investigating.
Well, that's a very good point. It should be reopened. It should be opened under the current Attorney General, Rob Bonta. You should look into why the grand jury was disbanded. It shouldn't have been disbanded because many of the social workers, including Eric, testified before the grand jury and gave the grand jury all the evidence that I'm telling you right now. Eric has an encyclopedic knowledge of the fraud that the Child Family Service was committing, but yet the grand jury was disbanded, which implicates the San Bernardino district attorney, because the district attorney is the one who convened the grand jury, and he was the one who disbanded it because he knows about the fraud.
In a perfect world, what would you like to see happen now?
In a perfect world, what I would like to see happen now is one, San Bernardino pay this verdict and not appeal it, and two, pay the claim that we have for Mariana Whitehall, but most importantly, locate all of those children. Out of those 54 children we call them the M children, the 54 children who were placed in that abusive home, who are now adults, locate them and make sure that they get an attorney, so the attorney can now bring claims against San Bernardino County and all of those managers who allowed them to be in harm's way. That would be the only restorative justice that we can have as to the M children. As to the L children, those children also need to be located and make sure that they're getting the kind of psychological help that they need. They're all suffering, both the L children and the M children are suffering from a post-traumatic disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, because that's what happened to children when they are traumatized and abused, you know? So that's what I would like to see. Lastly, I would like to see these managers go to jail. I think this Nicola Hackett and Hope Henry, and there's another one who was at the top level. These are the people who were responsible for putting these kids in harm's way, and they really should be criminally prosecuted. Lester, in the M children, this Maria and Leonardo Rodriguez also need to be prosecuted and put in jail, because as long as they are free, particularly Leonardo, children are in danger.
What's your view now of Child and Family Services? Would you feel confident in their ability to do their job?
Absolutely not. This is what's going on with Child Protective Services around the country. They're being very inattentive to these children. They're failing these children. And so it's hopefully this Barra verdict, $2.5 million, will be a billboard to all the other Child Protective Services around the country to say, hey, you got to protect the children. That is your one obligation, to keep these children safe. Hopefully your article, Gail, will help to shed light, put a spotlight on, be a billboard for every county Child Protective Service to see that if you don't protect the children, if you fail to discharge your duty, you will be sued. And your county will have to pay money, and these individual managers will be sued individually.
What do you think is motivating this type of behavior?
Well, what's motivating it is the fear of scandal, the fear of losing their careers, the fear of getting fired by the manager. The manager's afraid they will get fired and that they will be embarrassed and humiliated if the world were to know the truth. Okay, and they're right. And so, in the case of the Eric Barr case, they went to extreme. They engaged in extreme measures to cover up their negligent conduct, erasing the records that had anything to do with Eric, trying to put these children back into this home of the molester with where the dead baby was, putting the name of a social worker on a record that the social worker didn't write, trying to get these parents of the dead baby to testify that Eric had hurt them and misrepresented the condition of their homes. When the police department had described the home the same way, the doctor who did an autopsy on the baby everyone had described the house in the same deplorable, in the same way, showing that it was a deplorable home. It was a pigsty. So if you look at all of the hoops these managers jump through just to protect their own asses, protect their own careers, protect their own jobs. And that's what's at the bottom of it. It's not greed. They don't make any more money. They just don't want folks to know that they are failing the children. And they're failing the children in a criminal way. So they need to go to jail.
One of the other hurdles that I found is the confidentiality insulates these agencies and allows some of these abuses to continue, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. So what do you see as a solution? We need more transparency somehow, but we also need to protect the children.
We need to protect the children. We need more transparency, and we need the state to monitor their own agencies. We need, there needs to be oversight at the state level over these county child protective services. Someone in the Attorney General's office need to make monthly visits and make sure that these child protective services and children and family services, whatever name they go by, make sure that they are doing their number one job, which is to protect the children, to make sure the children are safe. Because once a child is harmed,
yeah,
it's a life branding. You don't get rid of being harmed as a child.